I'm going to get a bit heavy on concepts and theory in this one, but it's going to help set up the foundation for following videos, and you'll find that this stuff can apply in just about anything that involves live competition, meaning anything that isn't turn-based. So let's go. In the first video, we looked at a theoretical scenario where both players are seeing each other at the same time and their reaction time is theoretically equal. We went on to talk about getting the drop and getting off the X and so on. But let's look at reaction time in a bit more detail. Your reactions actually take place in 3 different stages. We can separate it into 3 different stages. First is the sensory stage, where your senses are picking up information and sending it to your brain. For example, light hitting the photoreceptors in your eyes. The second part is the cortical stage, where your brain is actually processing what you've seen and making a decision. Third is the motor stage, where you send a message from your brain to your muscles to make a physical movement. Each of these steps takes a certain amount of time, and taken together, this equals your total reaction time. The longest stage is typically the cortical stage, where you're mentally processing everything and making a decision. And the scientific study of reaction time is actually called mental chronometry. Now, reacting to a situation changes the situation itself. Your actions have an effect on the world around you. So now you have a slightly different, a new situation, and you have to make new observations and new decisions. And this means these 3 stages actually occur in a sort of loop. If you're in a competition with someone else, one of the most important factors is being able to make decisions faster than your opponent. If you're reacting before they can, their decision loop can collapse, which denies them from acting the way they'd want to. You can deny them from making good decisions. They start making mistakes, or they hesitate and don't do anything. To make decisions faster than your opponent, instead of trying to work out the correct way to react in the moment, if you already have experience in something and that is baked into your automatic reactions, you're skipping some of that mental processing time. With more experience, you also start to see broader patterns, and you can begin to predict what will happen several loops ahead, and you start to understand which situation will lead to another one. And when this happens and your opponent is unable to do that, they completely fall apart and you really get ahead of your competition. A method of thinking about all this in terms of these reaction cycles is called the Ooda Loop, and it stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. This theory tries to break it down into a bit more detail in a competitive sense, but I've explained the gist of it here. If you think about an ambush, you get at least one entire loop for free, but you don't have to take an entire single reaction loop away from them. If you can interfere with any of these 3 stages, you can gain enough of an advantage to win a gunfire exchange in a game. Even camouflage, for example, doesn't have to make someone completely invisible to be effective. If it takes your opponent an extra 50 milliseconds to figure out if you're an enemy player or a friendly or a rock or a tuft of grass, that can be enough to win the exchange. When you get the drop on someone like we looked at in the last video, you're taking away the motor stage from them. You might have exactly the same sensory and cortical amount of time that's built into your reaction loop, but they've got an extra physical step to take than you do. And this is nothing but milliseconds, but it's still enough to win. Pre-aim and pre-firing are about minimizing your reaction time by mentally and physically preparing for the shot and doing most of the work beforehand, before you even see your opponent. And this means you can get shots on target faster than human reaction times should technically allow, which makes it impossible for your opponent to act first.